Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Teas at dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Earnest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys for being on. Oh, something just happened. I don't know what that was. Thank you guys for joining us. Technical difficulties. Thank you guys for joining me today. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube page, subscribe to our podcast. Definitely check us out on our different media platforms. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere you think we are. All right, just look up Deal to Heal with E. James podcast and you will find me. So let's jump right in. And today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Miss Angela D. Lee. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. First of all, let me say thank you for joining me, because you could be doing anything else. But I'm grateful that you took out the time to join me and my listeners today on the podcast to talk about you, basically. So do me a favor, introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us who you are and what it is that you do.
Yes, so my name is Angie D. Lee. I am an intimacy coach, better known as the intimacy guru. And as an intimacy coach, I help modern couples reignite passion, pleasure, and connection in their relationships.
All right. I came across one of your videos on Facebook, and I was immediately intrigued. I had to look you up. I had to find you. I looked you up on Facebook. I had to find you on Instagram. Couldn't find you at first, but then I found you. So I'm very interested in the work that you do. I think it's needed, and I think there's a lot for us to learn. So I'm gonna jump right in with my questions, and feel free to add, and even if you have something you want to expound on, definitely feel free to do that. So I'm gonna start with the first question, which I think is a big question with a misconception with most people is, what is the difference between intimacy and sex?
That's a very good question. Because
Thank you.
um,
You're the podcast.
it's interesting too. That's how you know that this is a topic that kind of needs to be discussed more, because
Mhm.
the terminology is kind of interchangeable, right? So when it comes to intimacy, it's all about just closeness between two or more people. That can be physical intimacy, which is what a lot of people relate to when they think about sexual intercourse. But there's also emotional intimacy, and so how we connect with each other on a more of an emotional level with our feelings and how we relate to each other emotionally. There's spiritual intimacy as well, and how we view our views, whether it's religion, just our overall spirituality. And then there's like a mental, intimacy where we're connecting, such as like meeting of the minds, so to speak. We have some things that we have in common when it comes to our thought processes and what we believe in, and what we think about on a daily basis. And so some people really actually connect, especially women tend to connect very, very much so on a mental level and emotional level, because it connects more to the heart and to the mind. So when we think about physical intimacy, a lot of times people kind of put more so men in that category, because men tend to relate first, more so on a physical level, visual, and what they see
Mhm.
and how they connect physically. So yeah, so there's four major parts of intimacy, but intimacy is just all about closeness and connection.
And that was you kind of answered my next question a little bit, which was, what is the difference between generally how men see intimacy and how women see intimacy?
Okay.
I know you kind of answered it, unless you want to add something more onto it, um, because I think that definitely myself, just taking myself in consideration, I think that there's a misconception. Even though I do think men do kind of equate intimacy with sex, but I also know that men definitely want intimacy too, even outside of sex. But
Right.
I think it's a misconception sometimes, probably because we don't vocalize it as much, or maybe as well as women do, that we are not interested in it. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so just your viewpoint on that. What do you?
Yeah, for sure. So, a lot of times when we think about how women and men relate, if we just go from first a biological standpoint, and that's the thing that I think we, as a battle of the sexes, we tend to take that part out, and we need to kind of go back to the basics a little bit. And so with men, relating physically is really a biological need. Okay, and so a
Mhm.
lot of times women are like, oh, this is all he wants. All he wants is sex. And in actuality, for men, when they are connecting physically with a woman, that's how they feel loved and cared for. That is a love language. Is that the physical connection? And so for women, how we tend to feel loved and cared for is when we're connecting emotionally and through our minds first. And so that's why, a lot of times, and my husband and I, we joke about this all the time, but he's like, women tend to be more like ovens. It takes a little while to kind of warm up in that department, whereas guys can kind of be a little bit more like a microwave. If there's a woman that you are attracted to and that you have a relationship with, a connection with, and you just see her, the visual of her can get you going, right? And so, but
Mhm.
for women, it may take a little bit more. Like, I want to talk about how I feel. I want to connect with you first, and then I'm able to kind of open myself up a little bit more. And this is pretty typical across the board. There are times where women, yes, can just have sex, and it's sex for sex. But a lot of times, especially when you're in a long term relationship, after a while, for a lot of women, sometimes it's just not enough. And there has to be a connection through the heart, first, and that emotional connection first. So when we think about the differences between men and women, men's first stop can be more so like the physical and the visual, and then it can lead to a little bit more of the emotional. Whereas women tend to be a little bit like vice versa, whereas the emotional first, and then we can lead into the physical.
Yeah, and that's something that I often talk about when I'm talking to people, especially relationship wise. And a lot of women sometimes don't really understand that men are visual creatures. You know what I mean? And so if we see you and we're attracted to you
Mhm.
visually, then like you said, that's all we need
Right.
to pique our interest and
Mhm.
to get us moving in that direction. Which unfortunately for us, because it's that easy, sometimes we find ourselves in some situations or in some even relationships that we don't need to be in, because outside of that there's no connection.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
there's no real relationship values in that situation.
Yeah.
And like you said, when you want to build a meaningful relationship, there has to be a balance. So you have the
Mhm.
physical and the mental, and they kind of got to go together, or physical and emotional, I guess you could say, and they got to kind of to work together. And
Mhm.
you mentioned the love languages, which kind of go into one of my other questions, which I'm glad. That means we on the
We're on
same.
the same page.
So when we talk about the love languages, definitely I would like you to explain what they are for those who may not know,
Yeah.
that's lived under a rock somewhere, because I believe everybody knows what they are, but somebody might not know.
Yeah.
But definitely, what are the love languages? And
Mhm.
then do you believe, or how do you believe that knowing your partner's love language and being able to meet them there or cater to them in that way, how does that help, or does that help in gaining the intimacy that you want in your relationships?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start first, like you said, just with when we talk about the love languages, the 5 love languages. So I would say if you're at least about 35 or older, you're probably familiar with those terms. So just to kind of go back a little bit more in regards to how this came about. So obviously, there's a book by Gary Chapman, and he actually wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages. And his definition for this is that this is the way we all relate on an intimate level. And so either you're going to relate through physical touch, meaning that you like physical affection, whether it's hugs or a rub on the back or just even a handshake. Like some people just really relate, just through touching, and some people really kind of require that, to be fulfilled, in a relationship. And so that's one of the love languages. There's quality time. So just, spending time, uninterrupted time, whether it's 10 minutes or a few hours, quality time is all about just, being there with that person, whether you all are doing something together or you're just watching a movie or something, but it's just all about that time with the two of you. There's acts of service. So sometimes I look at like acts of service, for instance. There was a time when it was snowing outside, and right before, I head in my car, my husband has already brushed off, the car and things like that, and got things ready or put gas in the tank. And, those are just everyday acts of service that really speak to certain people. Acts of service can be really huge, for some people. There's also so quality time, obviously, acts of service, physical touch, and then there's also I want to say, oh, I'm drawing a blank.
Words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation. Yes, thank you so much. And that, what, and that's a big one, and we'll kind of touch on a little bit more with that one. So, quality time tends to be like number one for a lot of women, because again, it's that emotional connection, right? And then when it comes to words of affirmation, a lot of men tend to relate to that, just knowing that they're doing the best job that they can do, that they're on the right track, and hearing it, knowing that they're just that person that's supplying, all of those needs and the things that their lady is desiring. And then the last one is, I'm like so drawn up, like it's so crazy. Gifts. So receiving gifts.
Oh, right. Okay. I forgot
Yeah,
about that one too. I'm
right,
like, what that was
right.
for?
So some people are really big on that, like when it comes down to like the holidays or even just random moments, some people
Mhm.
just really enjoy, receiving something. And that's how they feel, appreciated. So a lot of times those love languages kind of derive a lot from when we go back a little further. Sometimes it can go and stem from childhood, some of the things that we were used to receiving or the things that we weren't. So a lot of times those things speak to us for that very reason. So it's really cool to find out what your love language is. If you get a chance, you can always just Google it, and just put in 5 love languages quiz or something like that, and just check it out. If you don't know what it is, just by listening to those, you might already know what you prefer or what you like. But if you don't, yeah, definitely take that quiz and see where you fall in that category in terms of the 5 love languages. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the second half of that question was, do you believe, or how do you think that knowing your partner's love language can add to gaining the intimacy that you want in your relationship?
Yeah. And that's such a good question because, it's an interesting, quote or, whatever saying that we're all kind of used to hearing when we grow up. Treat others like you want to be treated, right? Which is that is drilled in our heads. Like, okay, so I like this, so I'm going to treat someone else like this. And in theory, that sounds right. But once you really get into relationships, whether it's platonic or romantic, giving something to someone that you would want to receive in return doesn't actually work too well most of the time.
Mhm.
And what happens is it's almost like you have to kind of step outside of yourself and really understand what your partner desires or needs and give them that. So if you think about it in terms of if both people are constantly thinking about how can I give that person what they desire, it should not be too much room left for not meeting those desires because we're both making a conscious effort. Okay, I know that she appreciates quality time. It's not on my top of the priority list, but that speaks to her. That excites her. That makes her feel close to me. That's something that I need to plan for her. But then for him, it's like, okay, I know that he desires the physical touch. Like there are times I have to figure out how to incorporate that throughout his day. Like that makes him feel, on top of the world, or that, she's into me and that we're still connecting, So a lot of times when we think about treating others the way they want to be treated, I must say we kind of have to throw that back a little bit. It's not to say get rid of it, because I think there's certain things that, yes, we should be treating each other with respect, listening to one another. But when it comes to the love languages, it's all about what your partner desires first. And if both people are thinking that way, like I said, there's not a lot of room for misstep in that because the focus for both people is giving each other what they want.
Right. And I'm glad you said that because that's one of the things that I live by. Right. And I definitely talk to other people when we're having these relationships conversations. And my thing is, I tell everybody, if your objective in the relationship is when you wake up every day, your question concerning your mate should be, what can I do to make this person's life better? Just simple. What can I do today, right, to make this person's life better? And if they're waking up with that same question concerning you every day, then your needs you both will meet each other's needs. And if both of you are meeting each other's needs, then y'all will be good, and definitely knowing those love languages definitely adds on to that because it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
It just makes it that much easier because you know what to do. Like, hey, I know what you need. And then just a hint for any of the guys or even some of the ladies that might be here, because I know we live busy lives, right? And we all have things going on. So one of the things that I had to learn to do, because in a previous relationship, that was one of my things, because I do so much and I'm moving so much that I will forget, And so on my calendar, I will put a little dot, because you can't write it on there, because then you writing it down? Say something nice today, you know what I mean? So you can't write it on there, but I'll just put a little dot right in the corner, or the little box. I know what the dot means.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love this.
I know what it means. But if I'm looking at my calendar every day or every other day anyway, and I see that little dot and I say, oh, okay, I know, today or within this week or whatever, I need to say something nice, or I need to buy something, or I need, whatever that love language is, I need to communicate that, with her, so that she feels that I'm still engaged in this relationship.
I love that.
Huh?
Yeah, I love that. What speaks to me about that is that it doesn't always come naturally, for you, but it's an intention. You are definitely making it an intentional thing. Like, I am going to make sure that this gets done. Yeah.
And you know what, you see, we on the same page because you're all up in my notes and stuff. So, so another thing with that, which is the I don't know how to say the word, intentionality, whatever the word is, being intentional,
right?
About it, is if you want your relationship to work, you got to put in the work for it to work.
Yes.
And a lot of times it takes that being intentional, in whatever the word is. It takes that to make things go the way that you want it to go, right? And so I remember having a conversation, because like I said, I do so much. I'm always moving, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the complaints that I've had in the past in previous relationships was, so my one of my top love languages is quality time, mm-hmm. right? But there's a difference between my definition of quality time and someone else's definition of quality time. So my definition of quality time is just being with you, period.
Yeah.
Just, it don't even matter what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Just me and you, we together, watching TV, playing cards, taking a walk, whatever. As long as we together, to me, that's quality time.
Yeah.
To someone else, if we ain't doing something, you know what I mean? It doesn't count. You know what I'm saying? So they like, look, we've been in this house.
Right.
You want to talk about the views, we doing something, but we just sitting in this house, whatever. So even though that means something to me, it doesn't mean something to them.
Right.
And so one of the things I had to, being intentional, mm-hmm. and having these conversations up front, I remember having a conversation that, look, I definitely want to do things, but I'll be doing so much all the time that when it comes to quality time and at the same time, resting time for me, that's kind of the same thing. Yeah. So when I get to just sit down, you know what I mean, and be still, and then you're there with me, I'm good.
Yeah.
But I understand that might not always work for you. Yeah. So I need you to help me to help you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So right. I need you to plan something, because it ain't like I'm gonna be like, no, I ain't going. So if you like, you know what, I seen something I want to do, mm-hmm. I seen this concert coming up on whatever day, and I want us to do it. I'm good. Let me put it on the calendar. I know what's coming, whatever, we got that set. You know, and so you have, sometimes that's what it takes to be intentional about those things, putting in that time, using those love languages, using that information that you've learned about each other to be able to be intentional about putting in the work for your relationship. And so that's just another, I'm giving out all my secrets today.
That's good. And it's funny. What I actually love about talking with men and working with men is that, it's kind of even across the board, with men. For the most part, there's this thing of like, you know what, if I just know what to do, I'll do it. And I can hit a home run, Mm-hmm. But women, we could be a little bit more complicated there. Right. in a positive way, I say that, but for men, if you all just have kind of like, I don't want to say a blueprint, but like a blueprint, like if you just, you're like, let me know, some of the steps or the top 5 things, and I can hit it like every single time, mm-hmm. But for women, it kind of ebbs and flows, and there's a lot of changes there, which can kind of complicate intimacy sometimes from the man's perspective. So, yeah.
And another thing, even with that, is, so it is true, because we've kind of view things as a job, as work.
Mhm.
So even though it's a relationship, it's still work. Okay, we
Yeah.
got to put in the work. So
Mhm.
what is the required work?
Right.
So if you give us that 1, 2, 3, we like,
Yeah.
bet I got it. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Do it 1, 2, 3. The
Yeah.
problem is that women be like, you supposed to already know. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And then we said, we've been together this long. You should know what I like. Look, just tell me what you like so we
Right.
can go get it.
Exactly.
So we have to deal with all of that. And I think it just a lot of times with me, definitely, I just get to the point and I'm like, look, so I keep talking about myself. So one of the things that I do is I ask questions.
Yeah.
Right. So I
Mhm.
might ask you a question that I just asked you yesterday,
Yeah.
and that I might ask you the day before.
Mhm.
But in the moment, I'm gonna ask you again
Yeah.
because I just want to know. I want
Mhm.
to know what's going on or whatever. And so I've gotten to think, why you keep asking me the same thing? You just asked me that, whatever.
Mhm.
And I'm like, look, this is who I am. I'm gonna ask you the question. I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
ask you today, and chances are I'm gonna ask you tomorrow. So let's not argue about it. Just know that I'm gonna ask you. And so just give me the answer to the question. It will be okay. And I think that's those little, recognizing those little
Mhm.
whatever you want to call them,
Yeah.
habits or whatever that the person may have,
Yeah.
and to be able to, just accept them and overlook them, or deal with them accordingly, where you're not taking it offensive, whatever it is, and that you're not taking it as they're not interested or they're losing interest in the relationship or anything like that.
Mhm.
I think it is very beneficial. Just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
just kind of, and another thing that I think about is us. We're always evolving,
Mhm.
right? We're always becoming,
Yeah.
someone.
Mhm.
We're always becoming, and I think one of our problems sometimes is that we remember who we were, right? When we met, when we got together, you was this person,
Mhm.
and I was this person, and we were just like, man, it was weird. But then you got years
Yeah.
into a relationship, you got kids, you got new jobs, you got new stresses, you got new responsibilities,
Mhm.
and so you're constantly becoming that person that you have to be in this new season of your life. And I don't think that we always recognize, this new person,
Yeah.
and too often we're going back on, you know, who the old person was,
Mhm.
instead of recognizing, okay, this is a new person. Let me learn to love this new person
Right.
on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis. And I think that's just one of my things that from personal experience also, that you got to be attentive to who you are
Right.
and who your partner is
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis, because you're always growing.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And even to men's defense on that, when it comes to asking questions, actually, that's an amazing thing to do because of that constant evolving. If you don't ask questions and then you just consistently do something over and over again, that could be a problem too.
Right.
so so that's why asking questions is actually it's very important. It helps for clarification, and it actually shows a real interest in your partner when you ask questions too. Yeah.
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 Okay. So, and I'm going to go back a little bit to something that we talked about previously, and that was, and I liked how you explained it. With growing up, we have that notion of treat people how you want to be treated, and what that means as an adult, right? Because that's something you learned as a child, but as an
Mhm.
adult, especially in a relationship, that's a little different. That things is a little different. And so, like I said before, my viewpoint has always been, what can I do to make this other person's life better?
Yeah.
And I was watching one of your videos, and I liked how you explained it, because I connected to it, and that, and when you talked about, I think it was fairness and
Mhm.
equality.
Yeah.
Right. And I kind of got the same vibe and where that was with what I was saying, but I like the way that you explained it. So could you tell us a little bit about, you know, that bringing that fairness or bringing equality to the relationship in order to get, the intimacy back?
Yeah, for sure. And when we think about fairness and equality in relationships, when we think about like modern society, right, especially with um, the changing of the times and, even feminism and women wanting to, make just as much as men in terms of like employment, like money and the opportunities and different things that we can do that we feel like we can do just as much, as men. Sometimes we bring that same type of thought process into a relationship when in actuality we really don't want, if we really ask ourselves this question, we really don't want everything to be equal. We really don't. We want it to just be fair. What's fair for me as the partner that does this in a relationship, and then what's fair for you and what you provide. And I'm not necessarily talking about gender roles. I mean, that can apply. But I'm just talking about what your needs are. Because if we're talking equality, that means we're both giving each other the exact same thing. I may not want that on Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? I may want that on Thursday. And just the same for the guy. And so it's really important to understand each other and really know those love languages too, because then that way I'm being fair in what it is that you want from me. That's the main thing. I want to give you what you want. I don't want to necessarily just come from the standpoint of, okay, we're supposed to be getting the same thing. That's what I'm doing. You told me that's what you wanted. You wanted this to be equal, but that's not always speaking, to us in that time, in that moment. And just like you mentioned, with us evolving, fairness actually makes a lot more sense because of the changes that we go through in life. And within a relationship, there's, like you said, again, there's employment, changes, there's moves, there's unfortunately grief, loss. So many things happen
Mhm.
in a long-term relationship. And we have to be aware and cognizant of that in that moment, what you need. So, for instance, let's say you had a spouse who's dealing with the loss of a parent, and any other time they may want space, but for this particular time, they need closeness. So, the fairness of it would be like, no, this is what they need in that time. I'm going to step aside. I may not necessarily need that much quality time or attention right now because that's not the space that I'm in, but my partner is. So, my partner right now is going through a significant loss. And so they may need me to kind of be into that, in that moment with them. They may need a lot more, attention and quality time. And then the next day, it may be, I need a little bit more space. And fairness speaks to that because it's saying, okay, in that moment, that's what you need. I'm not going to just do the same thing the same way every day for the sake of equality. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So when we're talking about intimacy and relationships, and since you've been doing this, what would you say is a general, maybe some of the general reasons why, people lose the intimacy in their relationships? Like, what would be some of the hindrances that kind of leads to that, so that we can kind of know some of the signs to look
Mhm.
for?
Yeah. At the beginning, I think any relationship, if we kind of look at it in terms of when we were kids and how we easily connected with classmates, we were just kind of all thrown together in this class and everybody was friends, like whether you like kindergarten up to about maybe fourth or fifth grade, you're like, oh, everybody's my friend, and then as you get older and you start to learn a little bit more about yourself and the differences and things like that, you start to notice, well, that person isn't really my friend. I like playing with them a little bit, but they're my friend. But it was easier then, and that's kind of how it is at the beginning of relationships. It just kind of happens. Sometimes we're just attracted to people, and we say, "Oh, let's give this a try," and everything seems to come pretty naturally because, again, we're in those early stages of the newness of a relationship. Whereas I don't know much about you, so just the excitement of exploring you is what gets me going. So I'm willing to kind of just do anything, try anything. And that's what the newness of a relationship brings. So it appears to be very easy. And intimacy seems to come so much more easier because I don't know anything about you. I'm trying to learn about you. So that's exciting. But as time goes on and you spend more time with the person, and if you move in together or get married or you start to a family and things like that, a lot of that newness and that discovery of like what's going to happen next, that wears off, because now I kind of know you. I know your routines. I know what makes you tick. I know what excites you. And so then sometimes a sense of complacency, kind of creeps in, and even sometimes a sense of boredom. And in those moments, when you start to notice those things start to creep up, that's when you should be focusing on, okay, now we got to kind of start looking at some of the things to reignite the intimacy. But a lot of people don't, because they assume that, okay, it'll just work out on its own. And that's kind of the messaging that we've all been kind of given through movies and media. That's what we see. We just see people working with no work, no effort. And so it stagnates people, because they're like, okay, well, this is what I've seen all this time, but no one has talked about how to get that back. How do you actually get that back? I want that. I want to experience that again. And so instead of trying to reignite it within a couple, then we bounce from person to person, looking for that excitement and that newness, again. And so that's what kind of triggers how intimacy starts to fade. Those are like those early stages. And so a lot of times too, if we have, more avenues for people to talk about this in a non-judgmental, space, and to talk about the different tips, and the tools that we implement in our relationships, it helps us to understand that this is very normal. When your relationship and the intimacy starts to fade a little bit, it's normal. So I talk a lot about that when I'm talking to people. It's the normalcy of it all, and that it's a part of a relationship that evolves.
Okay, so speaking of getting back and doing the work, um, if you could give us one or two tips or whatever, or just somewhere to start, we're in a place,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm not going to say that we've lost the intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
but we see that it's dwindling. So just a tip that may be a starting point.
Yeah.
One or two things, if you don't mind sharing, that
Yeah.
we can look out for, and if we do notice it, how do we, or what would be something that we can do to immediately
Mm-hmm.
start working on that.
Yeah. And I know it sounds cliche, but the first thing that we can all do is communicate. We have to open up our mouths and speak. And we can't assume that even if we've been with our partner for years, we cannot assume that they know that this is where we're at right now and this is how we're feeling. Now, both people can be feeling the same thing at the same time and feeling like, the intimacy is kind of, dying off a little bit. But what if it's just one person, that's feeling that way and the other person isn't? That's when communication is actually really important, because that other person could just be going on with their lives in the relationship, thinking that everything is okay. But for that other person, they're like, yeah, no, I'm not necessarily feeling that, we're on the same page. And so, and when I say communicate, I don't mean at all to talk at, your partner. Um, I say that you find a time when it's not like a heightened situation, not when you're
Mhm.
already upset, not when you're
Right.
like in the middle of even about to have intercourse. That's not the time. We
Right.
want to find a time where it's a very kind of like neutral time, whether you just kind of just finished dinner, cleaning up the kitchen or something. Hey, I just wanted to kind of talk about something, something that kind of crossed my mind, and I just wanted to see how you were feeling, about this, and like, where do you feel like we are, in our relationship in terms of intimacy, and allow them to speak first, see where they are, and acknowledge that, and validate that. And from there, ask them, I want to share. Are you open to me sharing, how I've been feeling lately? So that the approach is not attacking. You're not doing this, you're not doing that, but it's just like we're just talking, we're just having the conversation. So the first tip would be to communicate. And the second thing would be you have to be vulnerable. And this is where it gets kind of tricky depending on your past. If you have some things that you're still working on that maybe you haven't been healed from, sometimes if you've had arguments before and you were vulnerable and opened yourself up and your partner really just kind of became defensive, or if you felt like you were being attacked, that can make it difficult, sometimes to be vulnerable, but it's extremely important when it comes to intimacy, because intimacy is about closeness. The only way that we can really get close is that we have to be able to share sides of ourselves that, we don't necessarily share with everyone else. So the two biggest things is that you have to be willing to communicate. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. And the third thing is to make sure that you're creating a space for your partner to be vulnerable with you. That is even more important, because we can be vulnerable all day long, but if our partner is not allowing us to be who we truly are without judgment, and some things are going to hurt that we hear, and it's going to be uncomfortable. That's true. But we still have to create that space for them, because when we do that, that allows for them to continue to be vulnerable with you. And ultimately, that's what we want, so that we can increase that intimacy.
I love it. I love it. Those were right on point. Right on point. Man, we can go on forever.
I know, right?
But my only problem is and I haven't had this problem before, but I don't know, maybe we just have a connection, because I'm about to tell all my business on the podcast.
I know. I have that effect on people.
So I'm like, let me be quiet. So, but thank you again for being on. Another thing that I know that I in following you on your social media is that you are also an author.
Yes.
So I know you have several books. Are they intimacy books or how-to type books, or are they fiction, nonfiction? I don't know what you want to call them.
Well, yeah, actually, I write fiction, and okay. I am definitely that will be in the works, down the line, where I will be writing nonfiction books, some how-tos and some tips, and I have some really cool coaching programs that are coming up too for couples. But I do write fiction, and I write a lot about the modern woman's experience. So. Mm-hmm. In those books, even though they're fiction, what I love the feedback I get from women in terms of like, wow, I was just reading this for leisure, and this actually kind of helped me, girl. Thank you for that. But yeah, I really love kind of just unveiling, a woman's like just every part of her, all facets of her, because sometimes we just don't get permission like that in society to show who we are. And through writing, I give people permission, to be who they are, and for men to kind of get a little peek into what women are thinking and what they're saying, and like, wow, that, when they read it, like, oh, that sounds kind of familiar. I would say too, I love when men have read my books. And one of the highest compliments I believe I received from a man before was, you don't paint us in a negative light in the book, the men, mm-hmm. They're like, I like that. Like, that sounds like a man, like this, yeah. It doesn't just sound like some character that's just like there as an accessory. But he also has thoughts and feelings and things that he needs to express. And that comes out, in the books as well. But usually my main character is the protagonist is usually a woman. And it's speaking from whatever experience is for her. So I have, books, whether there's a woman that's, married, or someone is not married, or straight, or gay, or exploring, or, these are all different types of women in modern society. So I really am excited about, sharing my work like that with the world, because it's definitely something that people connect to, and they want to see themselves. They want to be represented in the work as well. So.
Okay, good for you. Good for you. I love writing. I've always been, my family has always been into reading. My mother was a writer. My grandmother was a writer. I've recently written 3 ebooks, and I'm working on a physical book. So all of that will be coming out soon. So I love it. I love writing. So I'm glad to hear your success. Also, I know you were up for an award. Did that pass already? That whole situation?
Thank you. You would think I would have brought that up. You
But
know, I think
that's why I got to do my homework, right? So
I think I'm still like kind of in this space of like, wow, that was mad cool, to be honored in that way. But yeah, so I was originally about a month and a half ago, I was nominated for a book award, Black Authors Matter TV Awards, and that's through the Black National Authors Festival that they have every year. Tons of Black authors that come together every year in the South, and it's a whole big fair, and people just come together and find literature that is written by us and for us, And so they had an awards ceremony that was last week, as a matter of fact. And I was in the urban fiction category. So I won for that. And I'm so thankful
you
for
won.
that. Yes, I know, right?
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now I know you should have brought it up. I'm like, how you gonna win and not say you won?
But I was so happy, and I'm just so excited for that space, for us, because I think a lot of times, we are desiring certain awards or accolades based off of whatever mainstream is telling us. That means that you've made it and that you are doing your thing. But I love when we create platforms for ourselves, because we know ourselves more than anybody, And so I love that there's a space for us to share, our work with each other and just get this out here, because it's out here, when people are like, what's there for us, it is out here. So definitely check out Black Authors Matter, because they have an amazing platform with just like phenomenal authors in every genre, everything from YA, young adult, to mystery, to romance, just everything, nonfiction, spiritual, so many different things. You can find anything that you're looking for through Black Authors Matter.
Okay. I definitely will be checking them out. Miss Angie, I'm so glad that you took out the time to talk with us today. I've had an amazing time. I hope you enjoyed your time here as well. I'm going to let you have the last word. Tell us where we can find you, how someone can work with you if they wanted to work with you, and also where they can find your award-winning books at.
Thank you. Well, I am on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. My handle is N2MEC Coach. So IN, the number 2, MESEECOACH. And again, that's on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I am also on YouTube under Angie D. Lee. So if you just type in Angie D. Lee, you'll see me pop up, and definitely subscribe. It's a lot of cool videos on there where I address so many different topics as it pertains to intimacy and relationships, both men and women. Also, my website is www.angiedlee.com. And I also do free consultations. So if you're interested in actual coaching services, whether it's individual or couple, I do provide both. And so I'm just so excited to always talk about, intimacy and seeing where people are, and knowing that it's not just about, sex. It's about really, understanding more about yourself in terms of relationship and how to relate better, with your partner. So definitely check me out there at angiedlee.com, and you can inquire about a free consultation on there. And as far as my books, I can also be found on Amazon. So if you just go to Amazon and type in Angie D. Lee, those books will pop right back up. And it's ebooks as well as paperback. A couple of books I have out. It's called Discovering Lita and Something New.
All right. Again, Angie, thank you so very much for being on here. Look to definitely connect with you again in the future. On something. I don't know, be another guest, maybe something else. I don't know, but I had such a good time. I definitely want to connect with you again on something else. But again, to everyone, thanks everyone for tuning in, all of my listeners. Again, this is Earnest James. This is the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. And so I hope that I've done that. Hope that we've done that, added some value to our listeners' lives upon tonight or today. And until next time, we will see you guys later. Have a good day. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.